you see here are the complete version that would be the ones we asked you to adopt.
Okay, so these are the corrected
Those are the corrected ones, yes.
Okay. Is the mic on? There we go. Okay, thank you. All right, if there's no comments, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, can we do a vote?
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Baxmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Gillian?
Aye.
Mr. Critchlow?
Aye.
Mr. Gripe?
Aye.
And Mr. Jordan? I think you're on mute, Dennis. Or, no?
His lips are moving.
Yeah.
Thumbs up if it's an aye.
There you go.
There we go.
Motion carries 5-0.
Next item is Economic Development Area Updates. Mr. Shalio?
Yeah, so we would start with the General Redevelopment Commission, the budgets. We will have a June budget in our next meeting packet. What I wanted to provide you today is the TIF increment collection update menu table. And Steve Dalton is on, maybe can address some of the highlights of this. Steve, who's also on mute.
I'm off mute now. Sorry about that. I was flipping to the actual chart. Good morning, everyone. We received our TIF increment distributions in the end of June, a couple weeks ago. You have in front of you the amounts that were receipted into each of the allocation areas for 2022. We have also created a chart that goes back 10 or 11 years so that you can compare the June, which is half of the increment, to the previous year full amounts. So that's one thing to point out, is that we only received half, of course, in June, and the other half in December. The important points to point out, Bill, I believe you and I had a discussion about the fact that in the AM general allocation area, we received more than normal in 2021. We believe that was because one of the taxpayers in 2021 paid three payments. They paid a catch-up payment from a prior year, and therefore there's been some smoothing where 2021 was high, but you'll see that it's generally trending at about $1 million a year. That's all I have, unless somebody has a specific question about the nature of the revenues or the captured values in each of the allocation areas.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
The next item on your agenda is the property disposition in New Carlisle Economic Development Area for Willow Road and State Road 2. At the last meeting in June, we had put out a bid packet for properties that the commission owns at the northeast corner of Willow and 2. Bids were due today, sealed bids were due today by 9 o'clock. We received no bids. So we don't have any bids to review at this point in time. So we will move forward with any negotiations if anybody were to come in and want to bid on that property. Any proposals would come to the Redevelopment Commission for your review and consideration.
Is there a minimum bid amount?
There is not. So there was a minimum bid amount in the packet today.
And there is a minimum bid amount for the next 30 days.
Correct.
After 30 days from today, then we can negotiate any price that the redevelopment commission would deem reasonable.
Okay, got it.
So because there's no bids, we have no action for you to take on this item.
All right, very good.
The next agenda item is a proposal amendment number 1 from the Lockmuller Group. This is an extremely exciting project, and I'll give you a little bit of history, and then I'll talk a little bit about where we're moving forward with this amendment. Back in 2020, November 2020, the Redevelopment Commission entered into a contract with the Lockmuller Group to do the design and bid work for the New Carlisle Town Loop Fiber Project, as well as an improvement study for improvements on State Road 2, the intersection at Larison, and then the study of a potential corridor linking State Road 2 and US 20 through the Indiana Enterprise Center. As we've gone through the work, we really have determined that the focus needs to be on improvements on State Road 2, improvements on Larison, Willow, and Snowberry roads. And so we have a design concept for that work. What we are doing now is working to enter into an agreement with the Indiana Department of Transportation to integrate our project in with work they are planning to do in 2024 on the entire corridor from State Road 2 and 20, the interchange that they just built a couple years ago, all the way east to the US 20 bypass. So that project will be let in winter of 2024. Work will be done through the course of 2024, operational in 2025. So what we're asking to do, in our coordination meetings with NDOT on our improvements, we need to do some additional survey work that's outside the scope of the existing right-of-way on State Road 2. So north and south of Larison, north on Willow, and north and south, or north on Snowberry, we need to do some additional survey work that's outside the scope of that corridor. At this point in time, the contract that we have, because we have not moved forward with the Pell study or the preliminary engineering study that we were going to do on that north-south corridor, we have funds in that contract available to do this work. So it's a zero contract amendment, if you will. So there's no additional cost being requested, but we have to change the scope of the contract, the original contract with this amendment. So what we're asking for is your approval of Amendment 1 to do this additional survey work, which amounts to about $44,000. Included in that survey work will be legal description preparation for right-of-way acquisition. We know that we're going to need right-of-way acquisition on the northwest corner of State Road 2 in Larison, property owned by a parcel or by property that we have under option with the Redevelopment Commission. So we know that we have one property acquisition that we need to do. So this contract will also prepare the documentation for that acquisition. And then what it also does is it makes an $800 change in the line item and the contractual line item related to the design and bid work for the fiber project. Again, a no dollar change. We're not adding money to the contract. It was money within the existing contract that we're just reallocating within the alignment perspective on the proposal. I've included the original contract so that you have that in the packet. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
By piggybacking on the state project coming up and having it done in '24 and '25, is that a later date than what it would have been if we did it separate from them?
So I don't know the answer to that yet, because by the time we went through permitting and all of the work that NDOT would require, we'd probably still be at 2024.
Okay.
The upside with doing the project together is we'll have one contractor that will do all of the work. And so we're not having our contractor go do work that then could get torn up by the state as they do their work, or vice versa. The state comes in first and then we tear up something that they did. So from an economy of scale standpoint, it's the perfect way to do this. You will see an interlocal agreement between NDOT and the state, or NDOT and the Redevelopment Commission, the county, probably at your next meeting. We're working through the details of that to put all those terms together. But this, in light of accidents that continue to happen on State Road 2, this is a fantastic piece, really a huge community project.
That's why I asked. I didn't want to have it delayed and, perpetuate the risk.
Yeah, no, I think at this point in time, based on the work, from our understanding with NDOT, we'd probably still be in 2024 before we could get this work started, so,
Do we need to vote on this?
yes.
Okay. Any comments or anything? All right, can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'd second.
Any additional comments or discussion? Okay, you vote.
We have a motion. Mr. Baxmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Gillian?
Aye.
Mr. Critchlow?
Aye.
Mr. Greit?
Aye.
And Mr. Jordan? Motion carries 5-0.
Okay.
The next two agenda items relate to a project on Douglas Road, east of the Mishawaka city limits, west of Capitol Avenue. For the last several years, as we work with City of Mishawaka in that corridor, as Mishawaka improved Douglas Road to Veterans Parkway, there's a gap between Veterans Parkway and Capitol Avenue that's currently at county standards as opposed to the 5-lane standard that was built in Mishawaka city limits. We know that there's going to be property acquisition that needs to happen in that corridor. We've been approached by one of the properties we've identified that would need to be acquired at some point. That property is located at 14402 East Douglas Road. What I'm asking for today are the opportunity to get two appraisals, one from Iverson Grove in the amount of $600 and one from Appraisal Services, Inc. in the amount of $550 to appraise for acquisition purposes this piece of property. It's the first piece of property immediately east of the Canadian National Tracks on the south side of Douglas Road. There's a map in your packet, and this is a property that, again, will need to be acquired and cleared at some point. And again, we have willing property owners that would like that to occur now so that we can have a conversation about values. And I would ask for your approval on these two proposals, please.
Could you just elaborate for the commission what we do with those two appraisals? Because they'll come in probably at different amounts and how we use that to do
Certainly.
the acquisition.
So for property acquisition purposes by the Redevelopment Commission, we're required to get two separate independent appraisals. And those appraisals, then, we offer the average of those two values for property acquisition. From a Redevelopment Commission standpoint, a property owner, once those are presented to them, can accept, reject, or counter. There's a little bit of flexibility within Redevelopment Commission statute to be able to acquire property through a counter mechanism, if you will. But generally, again, we've got a willing property owner. And one of the opportunities that's of note on this one is there's no resident in the property, so there wouldn't be relocation or any of those typical expenses. So this is one of those that we're looking at a long-term play here, and so that's why we're getting these values now.
Thanks, Bill.
Yep.
All right, can we have a motion to approve these two appraisals?
No, just a question. The email that he sent with his bid, I mean, it doesn't even mention the project. Is that okay? Is that what, I mean, is that,
Yeah,
I'm sure that's part of this. He sent an email, I would bid $600 on this project.
Oh, right, yeah.
He doesn't mention what project or anything like that. Is that okay?
Oh, he didn't specifically, all he did in the RE at the very beginning, 1440, 14402
Oh,
Douglas
yeah, okay.
Road.
If you're good with it,
Yep,
then.
no,
okay.
it's acceptable
Okay. Then no, I
for
don't have to.
purposes.
Good. All right, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Baxmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Gillian?
Aye.
Mr. Critchlow?
Aye?
Mr. Gripe?
Aye.
And Mr. Jordan? Is that a yes, Mr.? Could you give us a thumbs up, Mr. Jordan? Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
Do we need to have separate approvals, or?
I believe it was a motion
Motion for both.
For both, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
yep.
This part of the meeting, I will slide my microphone back and let Chris cover the rest of the meeting.
So the next item on your agenda is the Project Honeysuckle Development Agreement, version, I don't know, 4. So I appreciate everybody's kind of patience and willingness to kind of continue this discussion with the Honeysuckle. There's been a lot of back and forth between us, council, and some external parties as well. This version, I believe, is kind of the final version of where we're looking at. I would call to your attention, it's paragraph 6.05, which is workmen and materials. This has been the main thrust of these negotiations, is identifying who the labor is, what percentage is going to be kind of from a local standpoint, but then also with LightSource, kind of giving them a little bit of relief in case they cannot find the necessary workers here. It allows for some widening of that net to make sure that the project can still be constructed in a reasonable time. There's some specifics regarding Form I-9 to verify eligibility of these employees, and then there's some extra steps if they can't do it within the local labor. They've got a 90-minute window to kind of collect, and then for whatever reason, if there's trouble getting workers in that 90-minute, there's another mechanism to spread it out to 120 minutes. So this has all gone back and forth with council. We believe this is kind of the final part of this, and we request your approval to sign on to this development agreement through the Redevelopment Commission. If there's any questions?
How
Happy to-
is the language in 6.05 the same or different from similar type contracts that we've done in the past?
So 6.05 is a lot stronger with the local labor piece comparatively. I think this paragraph started off as being, what, 4 sentences? I think it was,
Essentially, the very first version just said that the developer had to use reasonable efforts to use local sources for materials and labor.
so
And
it's,
this language has been negotiated and discussed with the developer?
yes, and Darren Jacobs with Lightsource is on the call if you have any questions. But yeah, they have been in those discussions to verify that they're okay with moving forward with this.
Just from my part, thank you to Chris and Phil and Darren for working with the council and the local labor folks. I know that there was frustrating moments for sure, but I just think it's a great example of everybody coming together and getting something that's palatable for everybody, that's also going to help the community and the county. So just acknowledgement that I know it was a lot of work.
Appreciate that.
Chris, at this point, all of the parties are in agreement on this? And by that, I mean all the local labor.
To my knowledge, and Darren, if you want to speak a little bit more towards any negotiations with the local labor piece.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes?
Yeah, so we have reached an agreement with the operators union and the laborers union. We are still having some ongoing conversations with the IBEW, but we feel like we're very close. I think from the standpoint of the language in what you're adopting today, or hope you adopt today, there's been a lot of back and forth, and we're comfortable with the language as far as the local hiring. I mean, that's sort of a separate piece from this discussion with labor, but we've committed into this document to use 75% local workforce. Again, sort of that back and forth of what's defined as local. We're going to try to utilize, obviously, St. Joseph County and the surrounding counties as much as possible. That just makes sense for us. We sort of had this little bit of a buffer of a 90-minute window, which is, a reasonable commute. That, as you all know, that there's obviously difficulty with any project or with any company right now finding workforce. So we need a little bit of latitude. And then even with this mechanism of, if all else fails, we still have this kind of other opportunity to come back to the county and say, look, we're really having a problem finding workforce. And we'd like to extend that out a little bit. So we're going to use all of our efforts to try to hire as many local people as possible. And hopefully that will help the community and certainly will be a benefit to the project. Be happy to answer any other questions you gentlemen may have.
Anybody have any other questions? All right, so hopefully for the last time, do we have a motion to approve?
I'd move to approve.
Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Carl.
Any further discussion? Okay, can we have a vote, please?
Mr. Baxmeyer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Gillian, how do you vote? Was that an aye? Sorry.
That was an aye, yeah.
Thank you.
Apologies.
Mr. Critchlow,
Aye.
Mr. Gray,
Aye.
and Mr. Jordan? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
We have no additional business
Okay,
at
no
this
additional
time.
business? All right, so now is the time for public comment. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Timing for you.
Oh, thank you. I got a little timer here.
You want to do it?
Yeah.
Control freak.
Multitasking. Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me okay? Hi, I'm Deborah Durrell, 21677 Otten Road, South Bend. I want to congratulate everyone for working on the honeysuckle agreement, and with the company, I am definitely in favor of this project. I think that all of the extra work that has gone into negotiating the various aspects of it which are not completely finished yet, but I think it's a good sign for where we are headed in St. Joseph County. One of the things that I'm constantly reminded of every day is how lucky we are to be living here. We're perfectly, almost ideally suited and placed in our nation for having beautiful 4 seasons all year round without experiencing the weather extremes that we see in almost every other area. While we do not have some of the dramatic beauty of the coastlines and the mountains, we can get out and enjoy our outdoors almost every day. And that increases continually the quality of life value that this area has in this nation as other people are looking at this area. And so one of the things that I think is really important, and Darren set up a conference call for me with Lexi, who is handling the pollinator habitat for the honeysuckle. I had a short discussion with them, unfortunately, due to my own issues. But one of the things that I'm convinced of is that they are taking this seriously. We were not able to firmly identify what chemicals they will be using, as invasives invariably try to enter into a pollinator habitat, and that getting good germination and coverage is a multi-year process. So that's something that we remain interested in hearing about. But also, I would like to call to your attention in this Time magazine, there's an excellent article about the co-founder, J.B. Straubel. He was the co-founder for Tesla with Elon Musk, and he is doing something very visionary and very economy-oriented, but also very sustainable in that he is looking at recycling batteries that are required for all solar. Because as you know, the mining for materials is a huge issue. And so he's looking at preserving our land as the people who are in this area are also concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Dan Caruso, 305 Compton Street, New Carlisle. It was the Willow Road issue, Willow Road and State 2, with the bids being opened this morning and there being no bids, which I believe was anticipated. And with Abby Wiles and her team still putting together the new comprehensive land use plan. Now apparently in 30 days, I'm going to be able to go out there and buy the land if I want it. I think this leads to possible allowing somebody to come in here who may have something which we're going to exclude from being allowed to come in here in the new comprehensive land use plan when Abby's team finishes that up. And I think it would be appropriate to table any further issues with that land, selling it to anybody, putting anything on it until Abby's team comes up with the new land use plan. The county seems to buy a lot of property and then sort of be stuck with it at a loss. Another perfect example, 56275 Snowberry Road, 18 point some acres, a house torn down, the pole barn torn down, well and septic ripped out in anticipation of, I believe that was supposed to be the north-south corridor up Snowberry Road between 20 and 2. No takers or it was speculative buying by the counties, just like the trailer park that still sits there, 8 trailers still sit there, but the speculative buying didn't pay off. Now they're looking to sell it to potentially the highest bidder. Since the north-south corridor didn't pay off, didn't come through. I think any further land bidding and anybody bidding on land to move something into that whole area out there, the core area, the whole farmland area out there in New Carlisle and Olive Township should all be tabled until we find out exactly what Abby and her team, I know there's specifics saying, yeah, you can't bring mercury in here, you can't, the usual stuff. But until we have the finished product, I say you're backing the team into a corner and saying, if you put somebody out there who has something that's a little marginal and some people might object to, you're tying their hands behind their backs and saying, well, you're gonna have to let that in because they're already there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Gardner with the operating engineers. I wanted to thank all parties that were involved in this economic development agreement. It was unique in its nature, something that, from my understanding, that has not been looked at this point, in this way before. I want to thank Lightsource BP for the patience on getting us to this point, and I want to thank you guys for doing a good job of doing your due diligence for your constituents and the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Is there anybody else?
Anyone online wish to speak? Seeing none, motion to adjourn would be in order.
Okay.
We have
A
a
second.
motion.
Second.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Baxmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Gillian?
Aye.
Mr. Critchlow?
Aye.
Mr. Greif?
Aye,
And Mr. Jordan? Motion, our meeting is adjourned.
we are adjourned.
See you guys.
Hit the gavel twice.
Did you?
The gavel twice, baby.
Oh, boy.